Buckle up here, because the social media elite have officially jumped the shark. Yesterday, the New York Post published a bombshell story that raises even more questions over whether Joe Biden abused his power as Vice President of the United States for the financial benefit of his family. It's a made-for-TV story about foreign business dealings, money, corruption, and power. And the social media gods really don't want you to read it. After years of allowing rumors about Donald Trump to run rampant, Facebook has admitted to intentionally suppressing this story about Biden, and Twitter is now freezing the account of anyone who shares it. Here's the story they don't want you to know. Listen while you can. It all started after the New York Post, not the Times, the Post, published a story that contradicts Joe Biden's claims that he'd never talked to his son Hunter about Hunter's overseas business dealings. And even more than that, that Joe might have even been involved with it.
There are serious questions for Joe Biden this evening following the publication of emails allegedly belonging to his son Hunter that contradict, or seem to, the nominee's insistence the two never discussed business dealings with Ukraine.
Okay, now hang with me here, because this is a tangled ball of yarn. Y'all remember Burisma?
A Ukrainian natural gas company, Burisma, accused of corruption, appoints Hunter Biden, seen here in their promotional videos, to their board of directors, paying his firm more than $1 million a year.
Despite the fact that he had exactly zero industry experience.
What were your qualifications to be on the board of Burisma?
Well, I was vice chairman of the board of Amtrak for 5 years. I was the chairman of the board of the UN World Food Program. I was a lawyer for Boies Schiller Flexner, one of the most prestigious law firms in the world.
Hunter, a lawyer who had just been discharged from the Navy Reserves for testing positive for cocaine.
Bottom line is that I know that I was completely qualified to be on the board.
Now, this is notable because Joe Biden, who was vice president of the United States at the time, pressured Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko into getting rid of Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, who was investigating Burisma.
And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money.
Now, despite that being a clear conflict of interest, Joe says the two had nothing to do with each other, that he only pushed for Shokin's firing because the guy was corrupt.
I'm desperately concerned about the backsliding on the part of Kyiv in terms of corruption.
Not only that, he claims he never even talked to Hunter, his own son, about his involvement with Burisma or any of Hunter's overseas business dealings.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
Did you and your father ever discuss Ukraine?
No. As I said, the only time was after a news account. It wasn't a discussion in any way. There's no but to this. No, we never did.
Your dad said, I hope you know what you're doing.
I hope you know what you're doing.
I do?
And I said, I do. And that was literally the end of our discussion.
That is, until someone got a hold of Hunter's laptop. According to the New York Post, the computer was reportedly dropped off at a repair store in Delaware in April of 2019 to be looked at for water damage. The store owner said no one ever returned to claim it or the hard drive that had been used to back it up. Now, on the laptop, mixed in with photos and videos of Hunter reportedly smoking crack and engaged in all kinds of nasty sex acts, they also reportedly found an email from 2014 sent by a guy named Vadim Pozharsky, who's an advisor to the board of Burisma, asking if Hunter could use his influence to keep the company out of hot water with the Ukrainian government. Then later, Pozharsky thanks Hunter for inviting him to D.C. and introducing him to his dad, then Vice President Joe Biden. Less than 8 months later, Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine unless the Ukrainian president fired Shokin, the guy who wanted to investigate the company. And Shokin was fired.
And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign.
Oh, son of a bitch.
The laptop also reportedly contained 2017 emails regarding Hunter Biden's association with a massive Chinese energy company.
And Ukraine wasn't the only country where Hunter Biden's business and his father's diplomacy as vice president intersected. It also happened in China.
This video shows Chinese diplomats greeting Vice President Biden as he arrived in Beijing in December of 2013. Right by his side, his son Hunter. Less than 2 weeks later, Hunter's firm had new business, creating an investment fund in China involving the government-controlled Bank of China. With reports, they hope to raise $1.5 billion. Hunter still plays a role in the fund. His lawyer says his stake is worth about $500,000.
These emails appeared to show negotiations about equity stakes in a new holding company called Hudson West that had already agreed to pay Hunter more than $10 million a year for introductions alone, but was now planning to give him 50% ownership in the company, which Hunter described in the email as, quote, interesting to me and my family. The FBI seized this hard drive in December, and now the New York Post has gotten a hold of a copy, so that's the story, or at least the part we know now. Nothing in it has been proven false. The Bidens haven't even denied that these emails are real. It's a story that raises legitimate questions over whether Joe Biden abused his power as vice president for the personal financial benefit of his family, and the left-wing social media gods really don't want you to know about it.
Two social media giants are hitting pause on the potential viral story until fact-checkers weigh in, and that's creating its own uproar.
Facebook's policy communications director, Andy Stone, said this week that Facebook would be reducing the story's distribution on our platform until it could be verified by Facebook's third-party fact-checkers. Twitter is now making up new rules by claiming they won't allow links to the story on their website and will freeze the account of anyone who shares it because it contains hacked or stolen material. So far, they've frozen the accounts of White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, our own Newsbusters' Curtis Houck, the New York Post itself, and others just for sharing the link to the story, which makes about as much sense as trying to hide a body in a public park in broad daylight, because as we all know by now, they were all too happy to flood their platforms with rumors about President Donald Trump for, I don't know, the last 4 years, including wild allegations about Russian hookers and backdoor dealings with the Kremlin, taken from a dossier that had a potential Russian spy as a subsource. They ran articles that contained personal information based on an illegally obtained FISA warrant that was in turn based on that ridiculous dossier. A warrant that should never have been issued in the first place, and that the Obama administration used to spy on the Trump campaign. Yeah. They have repeatedly allowed unverified stories based on anonymous sources that have claimed everything from Donald Trump called military members losers, to that he said he hates Christians, to rumors about how Paul Manafort was going to testify to, good Lord, I can't list them all. None of that had to be fact-checked before it was smeared all over people's news feeds. Seriously? They've allowed news outlets to publish Trump's personal tax returns that weren't voluntarily disclosed and that the New York Times could never have lawfully obtained, much less plastered all over their front page. And not only did Twitter allow that article to run unimpeded, it was one of their top trending stories. But now all of a sudden they decided to be the moral arbiters here and independently verify everything before the American people can be allowed to see it. After all, we wouldn't want to spread fake news or illegally obtained information, right? Yeah, bull. These platforms have long since given up their right to say that they won't share certain information based on its source. They do it all the time. And intentionally keeping this particular story from voters amounts to an in-kind contribution to the Biden campaign of incalculable value. You want to talk about election tampering? This is Exhibit A. Americans deserve to know whether a presidential candidate had backdoor dealings with foreign governments or used his power to the personal financial advantage of his family. And to intentionally quash that story for reasons that you just made up yesterday is blatant political activism. Facebook and Twitter are working for the Biden campaign. What was left of that gig is up. These are editorial publishers with political goals, and they should be treated accordingly. And that's your Reality Check, America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, like us on Facebook and Twitter while you still can, and stay sane out there.